Hello everybody, this is episode number 435, Specium Bonum, S-U-B space Specium, S-P-E-C-I-U-M space Bonum, B-O-N-U-M, under the species of good. And this is a Latin phrase that people only act in moral ways, like they do moral acts only when they think they're well-intended, under the species of good, that you have to be well-intended to actually act, and even evil people that have acted over time, Hitler and Stalin, Pol Pot, or whatever, all the dictators of the world, Trotsky, that they always thought they were doing for the greater good, right? For the greater good, and that's how they acted. And here's the deal. So all people that are psychologically normal, which I don't know how many people there are like that, but most people, let's say, are within the realm of normalcy, okay? And but if people that actually act thinking that they're going to do evil, like the Columbine shooters or something like that, or school shooters, that those people are psychopaths. Like, if you could separate the well-intention of your act, like you're malintended and you actually do it anyway, that's psychopathic behavior. I don't know what percentage of the population is psychopathic, but it's probably a lower percentage. I would say 1, 3, 5% or something like that. I don't think it's a strong minority. I think it's probably a weak minority of people. But we all have to act. We all have to think we're acting for the good when we're actually acting, okay? Or otherwise, it does something psychologically to our brains. And there's something called Stockholm syndrome. It's kind of a dissociative psychological disease that these people they're taken hostage. Okay, John Benet Ramsey was one of them down in Utah, right? And so what they do is they're taken hostage, and then people do things to them, right? They violate their moral conscience. Okay. Then these people actually stick up, stand up and protect the people that actually did harm to them. Okay, and that's Stockholm syndrome. It's a dissociative disorder, and I'm not a psychologic expert here, but it does make sense, by the way. Like, these people who are stolen from their families, and they do horrible things to them, and then suddenly they're protecting the people that actually harmed them. There's something weird and dissociative about that. And I think, by the way, I think it probably has something to do with the violation of Specium Bonum, or under the species of good, meaning when they're stolen from their families and they're put in this horrible situation, and then people do things to their bodies or their bodily integrity, it is discordant with under the species of good, and not saying they allow it to happen, but they don't violently fight or run away or something like that. It makes a disconnect in their head. And so to deal with life, I think that's probably what that Stockholm syndrome is. It's a dissociative disorder. And so, anyway, that's now we in our lives. Now we have to think about ourselves. We act in moral ways every single day. Like, you get up, you go to work, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And then we don't do things which we perceive as evil for the most part. Like, we won't pursue the evil. That's a non-psychopathic person. That's actually somebody with a well-developed moral conscience. Well, anyway, so in this world of COVID, I just wanted to talk about the realm of trying to force people to get vaccines, okay? If people have determined in their brain that they're not going to do the vaccine, that it's a violation of their moral conscience, and it's not for the greater good, let's just say psychologically, and let's just, for the sake of it, I'm going to be a political atheist on this, right? That some people are anti-vaxxers. We're not saying they're right, and we're not saying the pro-vaxxers are right? Maybe the vaccine's good and it's going to save humanity. Like, let's just make that statement here. But let's just say you have a big chunk of the population, which you do, by the way, that think that it's morally a bad thing to do. Okay, it violates their moral conscience. Okay, and then you take the force of law. Okay, you take the force of law, force of the state, and make people do something that they think is wrong. Okay, think about that. Are we developing mass dissociative disorders in society? Like, what happens to that person with that sense of moral conscience, where they're like, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I think it's probably wrong for my body. It's wrong for my bodily integrity. Probably wrong for society. Like, let's say that person does that, but then the events of the world hold them hostage, where they actually change their mind and they say, okay, well, I guess it's the easier route. Like, what happens psychologically to a person like that? Like, the people that are forcing the vaccines will be like, well, it's just for the greater good, no big deal. But the fact of the matter is, you got to think about the moral psychology of the people that you're forcing to do things against their will. What does it do to them psychologically? Does it give them a mass dissociative disorder? And it might. Like, these people, once they're in one camp, like, this offends my moral conscience, then boom, something offends your moral conscience and your bodily integrity, but you decide to do it anyway under coercion, right? Does it develop a societal Stockholm syndrome? And I'm not really sure about that, but you do see that there are people holding the line really hard in this country, and then they kind of change tunes a little bit when they go over to the other side. Like, now there's mass psychology, they start standing up for the other side like that. And what makes people's brains do that? And what is the psychological fallout of this? That's something you really got to think about. Like if there really is a dissociative disorder and people actually start sticking up for something they thought was morally reprehensible before, do they become psychopaths? That's the real question. Because, by the way, somebody that will pursue the evil, coercion against somebody else, right? The psychologic neurons in the brain that make you say, I don't care what your moral conscience says. I don't care what your integrity, your bodily integrity says. I'm going to force you against what your perception of the good is. And that's a really weird person that would do that, if you really think about it. Like, if you think about it in the sexual realm, okay? Like, that's rape, right? Like, I'm gonna force you to do something you think is morally wrong, okay? And don't go off the handle here. I'm not saying getting a vaccine and rape are the same thing. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the act of somebody coercing somebody else against their moral conscience. The people in the camp of the coercion, like, oh, we can make you do this because it's for the good. Well, what else is for the common good? And you got to wonder about it. Are the people in the camp that believe in state-mandated coercion, are they secret psychopaths? And you got to think about it, because if people develop dissociative disorders with Stockholm syndrome, or develop dissociative disorders when they are forced to act against the good, what happens with these people that are vaxxed when they drew a line in the sand and then they compromise their moral conscience? And are they going to come out the other side happy? Are they going to be like, oh, I'm so glad you made me do that, now I'm part of your camp? Or are they going to come out, it's one of two things. Either one, they're going to have to develop a dissociative disorder to come into your camp, number one. Or number two, they're going to be flippin' resentful and angry and mad. And is that something you want to like provoke in your fellow man? I don't know. But so when you think about your life personally, like, which camp do you float in? You got to think about, are you one of the I'm not going to get the vaccine? Or are you one of the I think everybody should get the vaccine? Or are you one of the ones that say it's your own personal choice? Like, these are honest questions. But you got to think about this. You got to think about it. So people in the I'm not going to get the vaccine because it offends my moral conscience. Those people have to think really hard about this, because if you make that choice to go violate your moral conscience, and you're strong about it, you're strong in your moral conscience, like, the other side of that decision might not be as rosy and shiny as you think it may be. It may actually make you develop a dissociative disorder, or make you be hateful and resentful. It's possible. Then the people on the other side of the camp, like, oh, hey, I'm going to impose my will upon you using the force of the state. It's something that Americans shouldn't ever think. You just shouldn't think that. Like, what's on the other side of that? Like, does it end with the COVID vaccine? And the answer is undoubtedly no. I mean, because you look all around the globe right now, it's not ending with the COVID vaccine. They're pushing an agenda harder and harder and harder to coerce for, like, social credit scores, green passports. You can't participate in society unless you do exactly as we say. Are you the tyrannical psychopathic monster? And there may be some mass hysteria coming in because of this division of mankind, this division of forcing people to act against their view of the good, right? And I think probably one of the great parts about the United States of America, right? And just a final point here is the First Amendment, was Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or deny the free exercise thereof. And, like, what's religion? Is it like institutional religion, like Roman Catholicism or Presbyterianism or Fifth Reformed Church or Protestant? No, it's not. Religion is really the operation of your moral conscience, and your moral conscience is that conversation between you and God. And so the great part about America is that you can't make a law. that forces people to violate their moral conscience. You're just not allowed to do it. And where else was I going to go with that? I guess that's really all I had to say. Oh, and here's the other thing. Have they passed any laws to make people violate their moral conscience? Has anything passed the legislative branch of government? Have they actually gone through the legislative executive process and the judicial review? No, they haven't. They've done it through regulatory agencies, which is completely unconstitutional. Just an aside. But so really think about that. Are we, through coercion of people and moral conscience, are we forcing people to violate their moral conscience and become psychopathic or coercive or tyrannical? The same people that run into schools and shoot them up, are we creating that on a mass population where we're going to coerce the other side of the population and do exactly as we say? Just something to think about. Well, anyway, this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. Please like or subscribe, get to Mass, and pray the daily rosary. Thank you, and God bless you all.